This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
According
to the coalition forces in Afghanistan, a suicide bomber has struck near the U.S. Bagram Air Base, where U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney was visiting, killing 4 people, including the bomber. However, the Afghan Interior Ministry confirmed that nearly 18 people, including 3 soldiers, were killed in the attack. Later in the day, Cheney held talks with Afghan President Hamid Karzai in Kabul.
U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney has received an unpleasant reception outside the Bagram Air Base north of the Afghan capital, Kabul. This news comes despite the fact that Cheney's visit was a surprise. The attack was carried out by a suicide bomber who blew himself up outside the heavily guarded main gate of the U.S. Bagram Air Base, which is the main military base for the American forces in Afghanistan. According to a U.S. official, Cheney, who was spending the night at the base, was not the target in the attack, which killed and wounded more than 18 people. However, the attack has sent a strong message to the Americans about the country's fragile security situation, which has been a source of worry to Washington. A source affiliated with the Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack and said that the bomber was trying to make his way to the U.S. Vice President. Later in the day, U.S. Vice President Cheney received a rather different reception in the presidential palace in Kabul, where he met the Afghan President Hamid Karzai. Karzai discussed with his guest the security situation in Afghanistan and the U.S. support to his country. Cheney's visit to Afghanistan came a day after he met with Pakistan's President Pervez Musharraf in Islamabad, where the 2 leaders discussed the security situation in Afghanistan. The Vice President expressed concern over the regrouping of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in the Pakistani tribal regions and urged Islamabad to step up its efforts to counter this threat.
We are now joined from Kabul by Samir Allawi, the bureau chief of Al Jazeera in Kabul. What are the effects of this distinct attack, which is the most daring attack so far?
هناك حالة إرباك في صفوف الحكومة الأفغانية في الحقيقة وفي قوات آيساف والقوات الأمريكية في كيفية التعامل الإعلامي مع هذا الوضع. هناك إحراج.
The attack has created panic in the Afghan government as well as in the ISAF and US forces in Afghanistan. Today's attack on the Bagram Air Base has indeed embarrassed the Afghan government and the US forces, which were the main target. Today, Dick Cheney saw a picture that is much different than the one he saw a year ago when he visited Kabul to attend the inauguration of the Afghan parliament. On inauguration day, everyone hoped that the Afghan parliament will help promote democracy, restore security and maintain stability in the country.
وكان الجميع في ذلك الوقت يأمل في أن يكون البرلمان الأفغاني والديمقراطية الجديدة في أفغانستان ستساهم في إرساء دعائم الاستقرار والأمن وتساهم في الأمن، لكن بعد وقت يسير تبين أن الديمقراطية.
However, the facts on the ground prove otherwise, and the Afghan parliament has become an obstacle to the US-led campaign in Afghanistan. This news came due to the fact that most former leaders of the Mujahideen parties did not agree with the US policy in the country. In addition, the escalation in armed attacks by the Taliban fighters in the south, west and east of the country did not help the security situation either. This is the status quo facing Dick Cheney in Afghanistan.
اليوم السيد ديك تشيني في أفغانستان ويلقي بظلاله على محادثاته مع الرئيس حامد كرزاي.
Cheney and Karzai met in Kabul to discuss the deteriorating security situation in the country. The Afghan authority and government are much weaker than they were a year ago. The Afghan government has been increasingly losing momentum, especially during 2006. The US administration has indirectly criticized Hamid Karzai and often described him as a weak leader. Moreover, it has often accused Karzai aides of administrative corruption, which it says helped boost heroin and other drug productions in Afghanistan. Such increases in the production of drugs has created panic among some Western nations, especially Britain, where more than 90% of its drugs come from Afghanistan.
Thank you, Samir Allawi. our correspondent from Kabul.
The most preeminent Sudanese officials named by the International Court of Justice for War Crimes in Darfur are the former Interior Minister Ahmad Haron and Ali Kushib. The following report sheds light on these two men.
The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court named the first group of suspects accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Darfur region in western Sudan. The first group of suspects included Muhammad Ahmad Haron, one of the Islamic leaders in Sudan, who is currently the State Humanitarian Affairs Minister. He was the State Interior Minister during the height of the Darfur conflict between 2003 and 2006. He was also a commander in the Popular Defense Militias, which played a leading role in the military confrontations against the Sudan People's Liberation Movement. Later, he retired under pressure from international human rights organizations.
كما تتضمن القائمة بالإضافة إلى وزير الشؤون الإنسانية اسم علي محمد علي عبد الرحمن واسمه الحركي علي كشيب.
The list of suspects also include Ali Muhammad Ali Abd al-Rahman, also known as Ali Kushayb. He was a Sudanese intelligence officer in Darfur. International prosecutors said that Kushayb was a commander in the Janjaweed militia. It is believed that he played an active role in financing the armed militias and leading military operations in southern Darfur between 2003 and 2007. The International Criminal Court chief prosecutor accused the two Sudanese officials of committing crimes against civilians in Darfur and charged them with criminal responsibility and of war crimes and crimes against humanity that took place in Darfur between 2003 and 2004. Hamad bin Thabit, Al-Arabiya Television. The United Nations considers what is taking place in Darfur as the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. This region comprises 1/5 of Sudan's total size. It borders 3 countries, Libya from the north, Chad from the west, and Central Africa from the southwest. It is adjacent to other Sudanese regions such as Bahr al-Ghazza and Kordofan from the east. Military operations started in Darfur in February 2005 when unknown armed groups captured the Kulu Protectorate in the Mora mountain. Then military operations quickly spread to the cities of Qatam, Fisher and others. This surprised all political observers and the concerned parties, including the Sudanese government, because its forces were subjected to consecutive defeats by the rebels. The main players in Darfur are armed groups, some of which are the Sudan Liberation Movement, the Justice and Equality Movement, and a group of rebel Arab tribes. First, these Arab tribes joined the rebels. Then they joined the government and formed what was known later as the Janjaweed militias. After 1.5 years of military confrontation in Darfur, the situation deteriorated horrifically. Military operations between the government and the rebel forces have stopped, but the armed operations against civilians, which are fueled by ethnic and tribal reasons, have increased and spread. It is believed that the Janjaweed militias are responsible for most of the armed operations against civilians. These militias include members of local and non-local Arab tribes in Darfur. They use camels and horses to move around, and they have been supported by influential Sudanese officials to fight the rebellion, but it seems that the Janjaweed militia has its own agenda. One political observer believes that the Janjaweed's horrific attacks against civilians are aimed at expelling non-Arab tribes from Darfur and replacing them with Arab tribes from outside Sudan. However, some rebel movements, especially the Sudan's Liberation Movement, has been accused of human rights violations during some of their armed operations. The armed conflict has been transformed from armed opposition by certain political groups against the central government into a civil war where Arab and non-Arab tribes are fighting among each other. Foreign hands also have been playing a role from behind the scene in this war, whose price is being paid by ordinary Sudanese citizens. United Nations Commissioner for Foreign Relations Benita Ferrero-Waldner arrived in Israel as part of her Middle East tour aimed at bringing the Hamas movement closer to the demands set by the International Quartet Committee. Before her visit, Benita said that she hoped to resume direct assistance to the Palestinians if the Palestinian government agrees to meet the conditions of the Quartet Committee. She indicated that the European Union is determined to increase humanitarian assistance through the current international mechanism. terrorism. Officials in the Palestinian Security Agency said that the Israeli army withdrew last night from the city of Nablus in the West Bank, where it carried out a wide-scale two-day military operation, during which one Palestinian was killed and many others were wounded.
There is silence in the streets, where some residents had to leave by force. The Israeli war machine had imposed a strange silence here, followed by noise, but a noise that does not resemble the sounds of the marketplace.
The psychological conditions are bad. The loudspeakers, the noise, the dogs, and they pound on the doors. There are sick people here, but no one can get to them. The situation is very bad.
The army is here. We are standing steadfast. We are not afraid.
The children in the old city of Nablus have grown accustomed to seeing the Israeli military machines, which enter the neighborhood's alleys, eliminating any calm from the streets. The children come out to look around as if the occupation soldiers and their machines are toys.
We tried to visit my sister-in-law in the hospital, but they won't let us go. Every time we want to go, they sound the sirens and make noise. They prevent us from going to visit her. We did not know how to get past them, so we are blocked into a corner here. We are trapped here in my mom's house.
We have a humanitarian duty to our relatives and citizens. We are forming a committee whose headquarters will be in the Palestinian Red Crescent complex. The phone number is 134. If all citizens call this number, they can have their needs met.
Occupation soldiers target homes, stores, and graves looking for wanted people. As a result, dozens of people have been wounded and hundreds of others have been arrested. The search is ongoing under the pretext of combating terrorism and hitting its infrastructure. For the second consecutive day, the sun rises and sets in Nablus, where the scene in the city has not changed. Israeli war machines have filled the area. People have been arrested and wounded, and 60,000 Palestinians remain under siege inside the old city. From Nablus in the northern West Bank, Khalid Al-Qasim, Al-Arabiya.
Khalid Al-Qasim, Al-Arabiya.
Islamic Revolution leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in a decree revealed Tuesday the new composition of the Expediency Council for another 5-year term. The leader then praised the strong performance of the previous council in laying out the country's 20-year outlook plan, saying a strong lineup helps the council look into various questions from different angles. Ayatollah Khamenei advised the councillors to draw on the expertise in their bid to pass judgments on various parliamentary bills. The leader reinstated Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani as the chairman of the council for another 5-year period. President Ahmadinejad says the ability achieved by local experts to produce car engines is a source of national pride. The president made the remark at an inaugural ceremony for a production line of the first Iranian-produced auto engine Tuesday, and added restoring a sense of self-reliance among the Iranian youths and experts is among the greatest achievements of the Islamic Revolution. Ahmadinejad described the designing and production of the national auto engine as a giant stride which can serve as a prelude to further development of the nation. The production line of gas-to-liquid or GTL-powered car engines, which measure up to Euro 4 standards, came on stream at Iran Khodro Industry Group with an initial capacity of 100,000 engines per year. Foreign Minister Manouchehr Mottaki told the first international conference on Latin America on Tuesday Tehran's cooperation with the IAEA will go full steam ahead, adding Iran is ready to answer the remaining questions in its program. He said political motives were behind the referral of Iran's nuclear case to the UN Security Council, adding reports by the IAEA chief disclosed no diversion in Iran's peaceful atomic activities, something which UN experts have also okayed. Mottaki then said much of Iran's outputs face a booming demand in Latin America and added Tehran tries to tap into all potential to boost ties with the Latin American nations. A host of U.S. priests and religious activists who were in Iran a while ago released a statement on Tuesday saying that Christian leaders believe efforts need to be made to build bridges between two nations. The statement in part says the military action fails to serve any purpose, adding the followers of the divine faiths have been asked to establish fair and peaceful contacts in the international community. It also highlighted President Ahmadinejad's frank remarks that Iran does not go for atomic weapons and that diplomacy and not military action can provide an end to the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. The statement further said Iran invited a religious U.S. group in good faith, something Washington is expected to follow suit.
Tribal chiefs and active public organizations continue their activities in support of the Enforcing the Law Security Plan in Baghdad.
The Popular Support Committee confirmed that Baghdad residents have begun their unprecedented support of the security agencies in the hopes of having the security plan succeed.
The Enforcing the Rule of Law security plan has received a lot of popular support, which has created a bond of cooperation between civilians and security personnel.
Citizens, specifically in the Sha'b area, are supportive of the Iraqi police and commando forces while they maintain order in the city. I hope that this expands to all other areas, like the Jadd al-Am'ari neighborhood. We heard that the plan is not being implemented there.
We thank our brothers, the tribal leaders, and the residents in the Sha'b area. I commend them for cooperating with the security agencies to implement the security plan.
The residents of the Sha'b area offered their support in the form of tribal conferences and public meetings and helping it enforce the law.
الغاية من إقامة هذا المؤتمر هو أن يقول وجهاء العشائر في هذه المدينة.
We are now holding this conference to say that the tribal leaders of this struggling city stand in support of the government while it implements the success of the security plan in Baghdad. Good things will come from this plan, which everyone needs, including the return of security and order.
Members of the Popular Committee, one of the committees that supports Enforcing the Rule of Law security plan, said that their job has been made easy as a result of citizens' cooperation.
The citizens and the security forces are tight because the officers are from the same area. They are not strangers. The officers live with the people and the people know them. The officers know their customs and their feelings. They are from the people.
The fact that the citizens have facilitated the work of the security officers is clear proof that a strong foundation has been built for the success of the Baghdad security plan.
The Worldwide Security Conference criticized U.S. policy in what it calls the war on terror. In its concluding remarks, the conference considered this U.S. policy to have caused a growth in fundamentalist movements in the Middle East and the world.
Organized by the Club of Madrid in association with the East-West Institute and the German Ministry of Exterior, the 4th annual Worldwide Security Conference comes under the title of Protecting People, Economies and Infrastructure Against Terrorism and Organized Crime. This conference was established in 2003 and is considered one of the largest events of its kind. This year, more than 450 people from about 40 countries attended the conference. Amongst the attendees were presidents, ministers, and past representatives from various countries and governments, as well as an elite group of academics, experts, businessmen, and civil society leaders.
The conference is aimed at encouraging cooperation between the different governments and their private sectors in fighting terrorism.
The conference examined what it described the failures and achievements of the war on terror in light of the agenda reached in the summit of the Club of Madrid in March 2005. They discussed the establishment of new mechanisms in what the conference participants described as modest attempts of clearing the misunderstandings surrounding the duality of democracy and terrorism. They examined the root causes of what the West describes as international terrorism, pointing gravely to the U.S. policy in the Middle East region, in Palestine, Iraq, Lebanon, and Afghanistan.
I certainly think that we did not succeed in Afghanistan or the region, because the facts on the ground confirm that bin Laden and his group are more active and influential in the region. I also think that we did not achieve our objectives in Iraq. It's obvious.
The conference attendees considered the counter-violence measures taken by some countries as counterproductive, especially those adopted by countries and governments that joined the American war on terror. This has put American policy and the European continent under major criticism by the international community, particularly in regards to the breach of human rights and international laws.
لا شك أن المعايير الأوروبية الآن أفضل.
There is no doubt that European standards have improved, but Europe still has to coordinate with the United States in a unified plan, which makes Europe a partner in the unlawful arrests.
غير المحكومة بقانون.
هذا وسجل مثال معتقل غوانتانامو الحجة الأقوى لدى الرئيسة.
Former Irish President Mary Robinson gave the example of Guantanamo as a demonstration of the U.S. failure in maintaining justice, even though justice is its war slogan. Observers criticized this international conference, saying that it is similar to other Western initiatives, failing to achieve anything tangible. The conference did not settle the debates about the difference between terrorism and resistance. It also failed to engage influential parties from countries who are occupied by external forces, but who are considered to be terrorists from a Western perspective.
Serbia is cleared. The International Court of Justice ruled yesterday that there was not enough evidence to prove Belgrade was directly responsible for the killing of what reports said were 8,000 Muslim men and boys by Bosnian Serb troops in Srebrenica in 1995. However, it noted that under the 1948 Genocide Convention, Belgrade was also obliged to do everything within its power to prevent the genocide because it did have influence over the Bosnian Serb leadership. The details in this report. From Belgrade, Serbian President Boris Tadic welcomed the ruling by the UN top court clearing Belgrade of genocide against Bosnia, but urged his people to face up to the Srebrenica massacre. Tadic said the judgment by the International Court of Justice in The Hague was important because it established Serbia had not committed genocide during the 1992 to 1995 war with Bosnia. At the same time, he acknowledged an extremely serious part of the ruling that found Serbia had violated international law by failing to prevent the 1995 massacre of 8,000 Bosnian Muslims, an event the ICJ deemed an act of genocide. He said it's important that the Serbian parliament, as soon as possible, passes a declaration condemning the crime without any doubt. In Bosnia, the ICJ ruling provoked deeply divided reactions in the country's two halves, with leaders in the Muslim Croat Federation expressing outrage and Serb counterparts in the Republika Srpska hailing the decision. Tadic said Serbia would have to boost cooperation with the UN War Crime Tribunal, which is still seeking 6 Serbs, including Bosnian Serb General Ratko Mladic, indicted for atrocities committed during the Balkan conflicts of the 1990s. For his part, Serbian Premier Vojislav Kostunica said the ICJ had freed Serbia from the charges of genocide and vowed that Belgrade would take all measures to fulfill its international obligations with respect to war crime suspects. The European Union froze her rapprochement talks with Serbia last year over Kostunica's failure to fulfill a promise to capture Mladic. But on Monday, the German EU presidency urged Serbia to condemn the crimes of the Milosevic era. In a statement, the European Union presidency urged all sides to respect the judgment and hopes that it will help close a painful chapter in the history of the region. The presidency added that it hoped the democratic forces in Serbia would form a reform-oriented government which overcomes the past as soon as possible, following parliamentary elections last month. In a separate development, a bomb attack in Kosovo damaged 7 OSCE cars also yesterday, a day ahead of a visit to the Serbian province by the organization's chairman, Spanish Foreign Minister Miguel Ángel Moratinos. 2 explosive devices were used in the attack on the car park of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, although the second failed to detonate. It was the latest in a string of violent incidents in Kosovo since the start of the month, when the UN Special Envoy Marti Ahtisaari unveiled proposals for the province's future status.
A new documentary which claims that the burial cave of Jesus and his family has been discovered in a Jerusalem suburb may shake up the Christian world. According to the filmmakers, this could be one of the most significant archaeological findings in history. Joining us in the studio is anthropologist Joe Zias, the former curator of archaeology for the Israel Antiquities Authority. Thank you for coming in this evening, Mr. Zias.
Thank you for having me.
You don't believe the burial site is that of Jesus of Nazareth. Why not?
For many reasons. First of all, what we're seeing, this is part of what I call the post-Dan Brown syndrome. Ever since the book came out in the year 2003, we see book after book, film after film, the Da Vinci Code. Everyone's trying to sort of, I think, get on the bandwagon and see how much money they can make, and this is one of these really good examples. Basically, what we're talking about here, we're talking about a story which broke for the first time in 1996 by the BBC. It lasted about 2 days. The media hyped it. It came out on Sunday in the British newspapers, documentary. On Monday, they got in touch with the Israelis. We showed them why the whole thing was simply not true, and that was the end of it. But that was in 1996. That was about 7 years before Dan Brown's book. And now with this Da Vinci Code, the situation is just simply totally out of control.
Mr. Zias, the producers claim that the tombs bear inscriptions linking them to, quote, Jesus, son of Joseph, Mary, and a child named Judas, son of Jesus. You can see that there is a possibility that you may be wrong and that this grave is in fact linked to Jesus' family, as the filmmakers claim?
Well, you know, I've been involved in excavating Jewish burial sites here in Jerusalem for the last 30 years. And one of the things which we see, which happens again and again, these are names which occur so commonly. For example, the name Miriam or Shlom Sion, 48% of the tombs which we find where we have inscriptions to women are called either Miriam or Shlom Sion. The name Yaakov, James, Jesus, Joseph, so on and so forth, they repeat themselves again and again and again. We're just simply looking at a statistical quirk. What is happening here is the way in which they present it is very, very dishonest. Because what they do here, and this is how they fool the public, they present this evidence as if this is a nuclear family tomb. It's a family tomb, but it's not a nuclear family tomb, it's an extended family tomb. And they present it as if there's maybe, okay, there's 10 ossuaries. They try to give you the impression there's 10 people. There may be 100 people in there. So you can't tell who Mary is related to, who Jesus is related to, who Joseph is related to. It's many generations, extended families. You're in there with all your aunts and uncles. It's impossible to work the math.
Joe, for argument's sake, let's say the filmmakers are right and this is, in fact, what they're claiming it is. How significant a find would that be?
First of all, I don't think anybody would accept it because, first of all, he's known as Jesus of Nazareth. Okay? He's never called Jesus of Jerusalem. By the way, I think, matter of fact, they should even change the name of the place. The place is called, you know, today we call it Tel Piot, but in biblical times it was called the Hill of Evil Counsel. And I think the word Hill of Evil Counsel is rather apropos in terms of this attempt to go and hype this. Last year, one of the people involved in this, James Tabor, found a site in Sfat, which he claims is what? He rediscovered the tomb of Jesus. So we got Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus of Sfat, Jesus of the Hill of Evil Counsel, Jesus of Jerusalem. Hey folks, enough is enough. Let's get serious about this and let's do some serious research.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.